Welcome to my YouTube automotive channel. In today's video I have a 2012 Ford Mustang and I will be talking about main problems and issues of these vehicles from my own experience. Now I'm in a car sales and over the years I've sold a bunch of these vehicles and they come with a specific problems which I will try to mention today. If this video was helpful, please consider supporting the channel by liking the videos, subscribing to the channel or becoming a channel member. This video will apply to 5th generation made from 2005 to 2014. Okay, so I will start this video by talking about the body problems of 5th generation Ford Mustang. Now honestly, I never had or experienced any major issues. Some people are complaining about paint bubbling and paint fading over time, but that's not actually my experience. But what I always noticed, and every Mustang I had problems with corrosion on the front hood at the lip of the hood. Okay, I'll try to show you. So basically on this Mustang, somebody did some work already to the hood. There is like this black line here, and that's probably because it was all corroded here on the edge, right? So this complete edge will get corroded and paint will peel. And yeah, the only way to actually fix it the right way is to completely repaint the front hood. But as you can see on this vehicle, there is a bunch of like bad paint job all around, and somebody did some work to that lip as well. But like I said, the complete front hood will start peeling here on the edge, and yeah, that's the only body concern I have on this vehicle actually. So that's pretty good based on the age of these 5th generation Ford Mustangs, right? Some other vehicles will have major rust issues and things like that. Now, before I continue mentioning the problems and issues, I just want to say these are good, reliable vehicles, very appealing, and don't get me wrong, don't get scared or discouraged when you hear all these problems. Every make and model will have its own issues, right? So I'm just mentioning the ones I experienced. So if you are buying this kind of a vehicle, make sure to check these things. Now mechanically, there's a couple of things I want to talk about, and the main thing is the transmission. I would always recommend going with the manual transmission just because this is a Ford Mustang. You want to feel you're actually driving the car and have total control over everything, right? But if you decide for the automatic transmission, you have to be careful because this 5th generation had lots of problems with the transmissions. They would quite often slip, they would shift hard, and the most common sign of problems with the transmission is the flashing overdrive light on the instrument cluster. So this is something to keep in mind. So if you are on the market to buy a used Mustang, make sure to test drive it, make sure to inspect it underneath, make sure there is no leaks from the transmission or anywhere else, and while driving, try to push it, try to do a bunch of stuff to make sure that transmission actually shifts nice, especially when downshifting, when you are slowing down from highway speeds. That's when I notice it kind of slipping, right? So that's something to keep in mind. Next thing mechanically, what I will mention, those are the spark plugs, especially on a V8. Now this one is a V6, so it's not such a big issue, but if you are buying or own a GT, and if it still has a factory spark plugs, and I'm recording this video in 2024, and quite a bit of them that I get in still have factory spark plugs because I always try to get ones with low mileage, right? And they tend to break, and if they break inside, then that's a big problem. It's a big job to pick up all the pieces and take everything apart. So that's something like it's not a big job to replace them, but it can be a big job because the factory spark plugs tend to break So try to find out from a seller or from the vehicle history if spark plugs were replaced. If they weren't, make sure to find a good mechanic who has experience dealing with these engines and the factory spark plugs. If you have already aftermarket plugs inside, then it's not a big issue. Quite often the check engine light will turn on the instrument cluster. Now, usually it's not anything major. If you get a code P2103, that's throttle body code. Now on these vehicles, throttle bodies tend to fail as well. It's not too big repair, but it can be kind of tricky if that happens while you're on the road or somewhere on a trip, because most likely the vehicle will go into the limp mode. You won't be able to drive over 20, 30, 40 kilometers per hour. You won't be able to accelerate and things like that. Now there is the option to clean the throttle body, but it's always a better idea to replace it. It's like $200-300 part and maybe like 1 or 2 hours to replace it. So that's that. If you get the code P0456, that's the most common code on these vehicles, and it's an evap code, and most usually it's a problem with the gasket on a gas cap. The gasket gets worn and that triggers the check engine light, right? And in some cases, if the leak is quite big, it can trigger the vehicle going into the limp mode as well. On newer models like 2012, 13, 14, I believe, there is no more gas cap. But the older ones, like 2005 to 2010, they will have a gas cap, and this is the quite common cost, like I said, for check engine light. One quite annoying thing with this vehicle sometimes is water getting inside the cabin, and lots of water can get, especially at the passenger's feet, and then the carpet and everything will get wet, and then you get that nasty moldy smell inside the vehicle. And now this vehicle was detailed before I bought it, but still there is this moldy smell, and that's what I believe happened here. And the water gets inside the cabin because the drain quite often plugs up, and then the water gets in, right? Now the fix for this is actually to unplug that drain, and the drain is located just under this plastic cover here behind the battery. So you want to kind of remove this cover completely. There's a bunch of these plastic trim screws. I'm pretty sure you'll have to remove the wipers as well to be able to pull this plastic piece off, and then you'll get access to the drain. So what happens, the drain plugs up and then the water gets in through the cabin air filter area. So it's just like a small black rubber line which plugs up. So you want to just unplug it, and that should take care of the problem. But still you'll still have that issue with the smell in the vehicle, and then you'll just have to recondition those carpets. Like I said, this happened to me a couple of times in these cars, and it's quite hard to get rid of that moldy smell. While you are doing that, also make sure to replace the cabin air filter since you're there. The last thing I will mention, sometimes the battery will get drained if the vehicle sits for a couple of days, right? And it's called a parasitic battery drain. The most common cause is the factory radio. Now this mostly applies again to the older models, 2005 to 2010. So if that happens, the best fix is just to replace the radio with something aftermarket. Now these ones, the newer ones, they have this built-in radio. I've seen it only once happening on this newer one, and then again you'll have to replace the radio. But like I said, usually it's on the older models. Yeah, and that's pretty much everything I have to say. So there is nothing really major to be concerned about. Like the most important thing is the transmission, right? So if you're buying the one with automatic transmission, make sure to test drive it, try to push it, try to see how it downshifts, see how it shifts in lower gears, see how it shifts in higher gears, right? And other than that, everything is like minor things. Always also make sure about those spark plugs. If they were never replaced, you want it done by somebody who knows what they're doing. If you're on the market actually to buy one of these vehicles, always inspect it good, have somebody lift it on a hoist. Why I'm mentioning this? Because people like to modify these vehicles. They like to install a bunch of aftermarket things such as aftermarket exhaust, aftermarket shifters, turbochargers, things like that. So always lift the hood, make sure it's all factory, or if it's not, make sure that the work was done professionally, right? Like for example, this Mustang has completely aftermarket exhaust, and I can see that somebody was playing with the shifter as well. Now this is the factory shifter, but this button on the side of the shifter is not operational, but the button is like down here, so somebody pulled the wiring from here to have the button here for some reason. I have no idea why. I haven't even checked this car completely yet, but like things like this always you want to check, especially if the vehicle has to pass some kind of inspection or certification to be platable on the road, right? You want to check that exhaust, make sure that the cats are still there, and that you can actually pass the safety. Yeah, that's pretty much everything I have to say. Thank you for watching this video. I hope it was helpful and educational. If it was, please like it and consider subscribing to my YouTube automotive channel. On my channel there is lots of how-to videos, do-it-yourself videos, car reviews, product reviews, and other similar automotive topics.